Imagine the 25th of September, 2015, when the world leaders gathered together at the United Nations headquarters in New York to sign the historic Agenda 2030, or the global goals in short. Now imagine three young people about the age of 12 to 16 walking into the same corridors of power and addressing the world leaders gathered together by the Indian government. One of those girls was Purna, a young nomadic tribal girl who spoke to world leaders in her local dialect of Banjara. The other girl was Swarna Lakshmi, who was visually impaired. Purna's claim to fame was the fact that at the age of 13, she became the youngest girl ever to scale Mount Everest. Swarna, who was visually impaired, translated the entire speech into fluent English, but from a script typed in Braille. Finally, imagine Yashasvi, a young girl who represented Vaibhav, a boy living with hearing impairment, and who gestured the entire speech into sign language. Purna began her speech by congratulating the world and thanking them for rallying around this fragile little girl from a poverty-stricken family and helping her scale the summits of Mount Everest. But the trio's speech and message was simple. That the three of us children who do not know each other's languages can coordinate each other and speak in one voice, then why can't the world leaders, with all the money and resources at their disposal, come together to create an inclusive, poverty-free, and sustainable world? I need a volunteer. Well, actually, a child volunteer. Could I invite you to come on stage? Thank you. As this child comes up, I was going to ask you, what words come to your mind when you think of this child and children in general? Are words like cute, innocent, naughty, playful, dependent, vulnerable, and immature? Wow. And spontaneous. Ram, that's your name, right?
Yeah, how do you know?
Well, I heard of you of the Nine is Mine campaign, and your name is pretty popular there. So what do you think of words that we use in terms of children? What do you think of the words I'd use to describe you?
Well, as a child, I love the attention I receive. But sometimes these cute and cuddly words don't do good to me. And children in general. It supports the belief that we children must be seen and not heard. What if people actually began to use words that recognize my own power and abilities?
So what do you think of words like powerful and capable, and insightful and innovative, and persistent, energetic and passionate?
Yes, I love them. We have our own stories. We have our own experiences.
And you have your own agency too.
We have a mind of our own too.
You sure have a mind of your own. Ram, you little Ram, is somebody I've got to be careful of, or you might vanquish the big Ravan in me, the Ravan of egos, the Ravan of pride and success. We've got to be careful of you, little Ram, or you may vanquish this Ravan in all of us adults.
To that long list of words, then describing us children, I think we should add word citizens. We are active and engaged citizens of today, and we are global citizens.
Ram, I agree there. You spoke about being seen, and perhaps I gathered that you're not heard enough. What do you think is the win-win if we adults listen to you children? What do you think children have that we adults don't?
Well, we are spontaneous people.
Sure, while we adults believe in what's being politically correct.
We are seekers, inventors, discoverers, and problem solvers.
while we go for the tried and tested ways of the past.
We ask a million questions each day, like, Brother Steve, why are we talking to this hall full of strangers? We do interdependence, we feel free to ask friends and adults for help.
While we stick to the image of being strong and the image of being independent.
We are not full of ourselves.
Gee, he's more than just a pretty face. Yes, Ram, we adults believe in our success, in our fame, in our money, in our pride. Those mean everything to us.
For us, finding joy and happiness and discovering life is. We do inclusion and acceptance and this forgive and forgetting naturally. We have the raw, natural wisdom of our human species and that of this evolving universe.
Talking about innate wisdom that children have, I recall a time when we gathered 120,000 children from across India. These children were so-called illiterate, who knew not a word of English or Hindi or any written language for that matter. We asked them to tell the world leaders what they would like to see included into the Sustainable Development Goals.
Our top priorities were inclusive and holistic education, universal quality healthcare, safety and protection, and decent work in the future.
What was amazing about this list, of the wish list of children to end poverty, to reduce inequality and reverse climate change, was the fact that it coincided almost to a word with what the world leaders had to say about the same. Ram, do you remember the time when you gathered in Connaught Place for a flash mob? It was the time when the Prime Minister of Great Britain had called for a meeting, the Hunger Summit, to ask the world leaders what they thought about ending hunger. What did you and your friends who actually experienced hunger have to say to them?
We told the world leaders not to end hunger. We told them not to waste their time talking about hunger. We told them instead to talk about ending malnutrition. And our ideas was pretty simple. To end hunger, they will give us a plate of rice. But to end malnutrition, they will have to provide all children rice, vegetables, fruits, and proteins too.
Now, wasn't that brilliant? What I like about this 9S-Man campaign of these young people to end poverty, this campaign of, for, and by the children, is the fact that they use child-friendly mediums like flash mob and circus art and juggling. He was supposed to do juggling, he's just forgotten the juggle balls, and various other things that are child-friendly. They use these mediums to talk about all rights for all children and all members of the Earth community. They use these child-friendly mediums to talk about all their rights, and particularly Article 12 of the Convention on the Rights of the Child that says that children have the right to speak and to be genuinely listened to by adults. Article 13 goes on to say that children have the right to access mediums and platforms to speak about their own rights, to know about their rights, and to exercise their rights. These two articles precede a whole string of articles that talk about a child's right to participate. Speaking about a child's right to participate then, last month these young citizens had organized a children's manifesto for the upcoming general elections in 2019. Armed with this manifesto then, they're going knocking on the doors of political parties across the country and to individual candidates going to stand for the general elections, asking them to include their recommendations into political manifestos for the upcoming elections.
We insist that we, who are 1/3 of India's population and 1/5 of the world's, may not be voters, but we believe that the voices of us children can be stronger than the votes of adults, and that it is necessary for us to speak up now to secure our future.
This manifesto was put together by organizations who supported children from across the country. They support a child's right to participate, particularly the most vulnerable children. Talking about vulnerable children, the Ministry of Women and Child Development India claims that 40% of India's 440 million children are vulnerable. Our children's parliaments are inclusive of children with disabilities, children from excluded families like Adivasis and tribals and Dalits and Muslims and other minority communities. Some of our children are openly admitting that they're struggling with gender orientations. All these children come together, and some of them are from very rural and remote places. These come together in inclusive environments where they talk along with children who come from elite and middle-class families and speak about an inclusive world at local, state, national, and international levels.
Our last Prime Minister was a girl born blind. Our National Planning Committee of Inclusive National Children's Parliament, of which I am the President, also has children with visual and intellectual disabilities.
These parliaments are neighborhood in their essence. They gather children from a locality to talk about local issues of child rights, child abuse, and child neglect. And they're sociocratic in processes. They look at the power of listening, the power of including everyone, the power of sharing, rather than the politics of money, the politics of numbers, and the politics of influence.
My parliament, for example, has been successful in stopping a child marriage, in promoting sanitary pads, in trying to lobby with the municipal council for a child-friendly toilets in my local slum. We even managed to get a transfer a sports teacher of government school used harsh corporal punishment, and that resulted in a child breaking his arm.
At the national level, these children have written to the UN at Geneva and New York and asking them to track child rights and human rights at the local level. They've also written scorecards to their prime ministers and to different governments and tracked down what the situation of child rights in India are vis-a-vis schemes and laws of the government.
My friend Ashwarya had represented India at the official meeting in Geneva with the Committee on the Rights of the Child and other committees to dwell on children as defenders of child rights. I believe that leaders must listen to us children. I believe listening to us children will make better laws, better policy for a better India, for a better world. And that is necessary. For example, had the parliamentarians really listened to us children, then they would have realized that the death penalty is not a solution when children are abused.
Exactly. If 94% of all the rapists are known to victims, can you imagine a child like Ram or younger asking for the death of his or her own father? We have a dream, and the dream is that by November 2020, Child Rights Day, 100 such child parliamentarians who represent thousands of parliamentarians across the country will actually speak to their parliamentarians in Parliament.
Yes, we hope to take over Parliament at least a day each year when elected members of both houses would genuinely listen to us young citizens. And incidentally, this is not a totally new idea, since countries such as France, Bhutan, and Nigeria have already modeled these kinds of interaction in their country. In India too, states like Telangana, Tamil Nadu, and Karnataka have already conducted children's parliament in their state assemblies.
Before these takeovers, we'll be tracking what parliamentarians say and don't say about children in Parliament. We'll be scanning through the news, through budgets, and through other reports on children, and providing this data to young advocates. We'll also be conducting opinion polls and social audits by children themselves on the status of the national policy for children. We'll also be consulting thousands of them in their localities on asking them of what they feel about child rights and earth rights.
So, we do hope that India and world genuinely listen to young citizens and support us in ensuring that all children across the world exercise and enjoy their rights and not just occupy Parliament Street, but genuinely take over Parliament.